Shining in the sky, there ain't a cloud inside. It stopped raining, everybody's in a play, and don't you know it's a beautiful new day? Hey,
Ding, ding, ding.
running down the avenue, see how the sun shines brightly in the city.
On the streets
Where once was pity, Mr. Blue, sky is living here today. Hey.
At a young age of 5, my mom enrolled me in a community center, and they had a piano program for fun once a week. So I started with that, and then after a year and a bit, I was really interested in it. My mom got me a private teacher. Ever since I was little, I never liked playing piano because I was a very active boy. But my mom forced me to play and practice when I was at a young age.
I started violin when I was 7 years old. Actually started on piano, but I didn't like it, so I switched to violin. And my parents always forced me to practice all the time, and I hated it back then. For 5, 6, 7 years, I really hated violin. I just tried to avoid practicing stuff. My parents would always force me, but now I'm really glad.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
I never really appreciated classical music until playing several years in orchestras and actually getting better at it. So I'm glad they forced me to play as a kid, but I also felt like I was being constrained or pushed into things I didn't want to do. Aside from just violin, parents also put me in other extracurricular activities and placed a huge focus on education, which is good. As a kid, I always constantly felt like my parents had like higher expectations of me than everyone else, than average people, and I always felt under pressure to perform, to be better than everyone else, and that was part of what drove me to achieve like academic excellence, to practice more. Being like third culture kid, I sometimes was conflicted with, I guess, the ideals my parents put upon me, and then the like Western culture, right? Like independence and stuff like that. So oftentimes I felt like I was being held back in a way from doing what the other kids do, having that leisure time, having that free time to go hang out, play with friends and things. I'd be doing homework or doing some extracurricular activity that's been structured by my family. So I grew up with like concerted cultivation, middle class family, and with like pretty strict as household values. And I was never friends with my parents until pretty recently. But growing up, my parents, different from like other kids, where sometimes I would go over and they'd be like all friendly and stuff, like friends with their parents. I saw my dad as father, my mom was my mother, but nothing else.
I was born and raised in Vancouver. I'm a Vancouverite through and through, and I've been here all my life. My mom was in charge of most of my upbringing, and she was very intense. She was very hard on me. I'm very appreciative of that part. My piano prowess and everything that I've done with piano is a direct thing from her how hard she was on me, because due to my personality was very, very intense and very hard to deal with. So she put a lot of effort into that. My parents really believed in a strong education with morals and things like extracurricular activities were very important. So piano was a way for my parents to get me involved in more activities. I think that a lot of times is I would push myself, of course, but then occasionally I would be like, oh, why am I doing this? Or a lot of those thoughts come up a lot. But at the end of the day, I was getting results from what I was doing. So the results were my motivation to keep me going and to keep me playing.
This is my last night with you. Hold me like a more than just a friend. Give me a memory.
Music is one of the few things that, like, is instant gratification. In a way, it's like cooking and then eating food, because there's nothing else like that where you work hard for something and then you're just instantly rewarded with it. And after you cook, you get to eat that delicious meal. And in the same way, when you make music, you get to experience it at the same time you create it. I know that if given the choice of being blind or being deaf, I would definitely take being blind so that I could still listen to music, because it's just so cathartic and it just really, I think there's a lot in the range of experience that music can express.
I feel like learning an instrument and trying to perfect it to the best of your abilities is a process and it's a journey. It parallels and it reflects on a lot of processes and trials and tribulations in life too, and it teaches you indirectly, sometimes directly, how to handle problems, how to solve problems, and how to also perform under pressure, and to basically to execute on the spot. And sometimes things won't go your way, but you realize how to fix them and how to correct them for the future when things come up again. So it's it really helps with things that you do in your everyday life when you approach and your craft or your instrument or whatever you do in your musicianship.
Music is like a universal language, and it permeates all cultures, all languages. I think it's something pretty unique to humans, and it's a form of expression, something that's almost intrinsic to us. And I feel like, I just couldn't. I don't know where my life would be without it. What do you mean, tongue twice?
Yeah, just go on.
Everything?
Yeah, everything. Like whatever you want to tell me.
Okay.
Me got a load on my back. I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a sugar train. Yeah. Look at me, I'm going somewhere. I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a sugar train. Yeah. Look at me, I'm going somewhere. I'm a train, I'm a train, I'm a sugar train. Yeah. Been a hard day. Yes, it has been a hard day. Yes, it has been a hard day. Yes, it has. I'm a train, I'm a sugar train, I'm a sugar train, I'm a train, I'm a sugar train, I'm a train. Yeah. Chicka 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 chunga 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 chicka 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 chunga 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 chicka 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 chunga chunga chunga